tasted blood before the pain even came. My head snapped to the side as the slap landed, sharp and unforgiving. My cheek burned instantly, but I didn't cry. I'd learned a long time ago that tears only made him worse. "Are you trying to destroy everything?" Daniel roared, his voice filling the luxury apartment in downtown Los Angeles. He towered over me, his jaw clenched, veins bulging in his neck. "Our wedding is tomorrow, beauty."
Tomorrow.
"And you think you can show your face like this?" He grabbed my chin hard, forcing my eyes up to his cold, calculating stare. The stench of whiskey wrapped around me as he sneered. "Use makeup.
Cover it.
No one needs to know you're a foolish, ungrateful woman who doesn't know her place." My hands shook as I touched the swelling on my face. Tomorrow, I was supposed to wear white. Tomorrow, I was supposed to promise forever to the man who had turned my life into a prison. 3 years. 3 years of fear. Why hadn't I left after the first lap? After the first insult? After the first night, I cried myself to sleep? Because Daniel had promised me everything. When I first came to America, young, black, and chasing dreams, he was the one who noticed me. The one who helped when I had nothing. He paid my rent when I was broke, bought me clothes when I couldn't afford food, whispered love when loneliness almost swallowed me whole. But every gift came with chains. Slowly, he isolated me. From friends. From opportunities. From myself. Until Daniel became my whole world, and my worst nightmare. "Don't push me, beauty," he growled, shoving me onto the couch. His grip tightened around my wrist, cutting off my breath. "Tomorrow you'll smile. You'll walk down that aisle. You'll make me look perfect. And if you embarrass me..." He leaned close, his voice a frozen whisper. "I'll make sure you regret being born." My heart slammed against my ribs. The apartment felt smaller, darker, like the walls were closing in. But somewhere deep inside me, a voice I thought had died whispered, "Enough." The vodka burned as it slid down my throat, bitter but better than blood. I stared blankly at the wall, my cheek throbbing, my body aching. Alcohol dulled the pain. Just enough. On the table lay my wedding dress. White lace.
Pure.
Mocking me. I imagined walking down that aisle with Daniel's hand wrapped around mine like a shackle. Imagined years, decades, of pain if I said I do. Tears streamed down my face before I could stop them. I can't do this. I'd rather die than marry him. Somewhere between my 4th and 5th drink, courage finally found me. I grabbed my purse, my keys. My heart raced as a single thought screamed in my head.
Run.
And I did. Out of the apartment. Into the night. Down the glowing streets of Los Angeles, barefoot, mascara streaked, lungs burning with fear and freedom. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I had to get away from Daniel. That's how I ended up inside a towering glass skyscraper, lights blinding, vision spinning. I just wanted somewhere to hide. Instead, I walked into a room full of men in tailored suits. Their conversations died the moment they saw me. At the center sat a man dressed in black.
Calm.
Powerful. Untouchable. His presence alone demanded silence. When his eyes met mine, it felt like being seen and dissected all at once. "Who the hell is she?" someone snapped. Before I could turn back, hands guided me forward. Papers were shoved into my arms. Voices overlapped. Urgent, sharp. "She's here."
Good.
"Sign it. Hurry up before the deal falls apart." Mr. Wood doesn't wait. My head swam. I tried to speak, but my tongue betrayed me. A pen was pressed into my hand. In my drunken haze, all I saw was escape. Anything, anyone, but tomorrow's wedding. So I signed. My name scrawled boldly across documents I couldn't understand. Silence followed. Then the man in black leaned back, a slow, dangerous smile curving his lips. "Well," he said smoothly, eyes locked on mine. "Congratulations. It's done." I didn't understand what I had agreed to. Not until the next morning. Sunlight pierced my eyes as I woke in a luxurious bedroom I didn't recognize. My head pounded. My heart raced. On the nightstand lay the papers. Stamped.
Sealed.
My blood turned to ice as I read the words at the top. Marriage certificate. My name was there. And, beside it, Chris Wood. The name whispered with fear across America's underworld. The man they called the king of the underworld. This wasn't my apartment. This wasn't my life. Chris Wood? The name slammed into my chest, stealing my breath. I'd heard it whispered across New York City, like a warning, like a curse. The king of the underworld. A man who bought silence with money and buried problems with blood. A man senators feared and judges never crossed. The door creaked open. My stomach twisted as he walked in.
Tall.
Controlled. Impossibly composed. His black shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a hard, sculpted chest that had no right to look that calm on a man so dangerous. His eyes, cold, sharp, calculating, locked onto me like I was a file he'd already decided to close. So, Chris Wood said smoothly, arrogance woven into every syllable, the woman who crashed my deal last night is finally awake. I clutched the sheets to my chest, my voice barely steady. What did I sign? He glanced at the document in my trembling hands and smirked. Your future. My heart slammed. Marriage? This has to be a mistake. He stepped closer. Too close. His presence pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. A slow, cruel smile curved his lips. A mistake, he murmured. No, beauty Adeyemi. It's legal.
Sealed.
Binding. He leaned down, his voice brushing my ear like a threat. And whether you like it or not, you're mine now. Fear and rage collided in my chest. You think I'll accept this? You don't even know me. His laugh was low, mocking. And you think I asked for you? Do you know how many women in this city, this country, this world, would kill for that signature? His gaze dragged over my bruised cheek, my tangled hair, my shaking hands. Instead, they bring me you, a broken runaway with nothing to offer. The words cut deeper than Daniel's fists ever had. But instead of tears, something fierce ignited in me. I'd rather be nothing. I snapped, my voice shaking but unbroken, than belong to a man like you. The silence that followed was thick, dangerous. Then his lips curved again, slower this time, predatory. My stomach sank. I'd escaped one monster, only to fall straight into the hands of another. And this one was far worse. The marriage certificate lay on the nightstand like a curse. I shoved it into a drawer and slammed it shut, refusing to look at it again. I pulled on last night's clothes and slipped out of the bedroom, my heart hammering. The penthouse was enormous, glass walls, marble floors, a breathtaking view of New York's skyline. It felt less like luxury and more like a gilded prison. I found the elevator and hit the button repeatedly. The doors opened. Hope surged, then died. Two men in black suits stood inside, faces blank, guns pressing against their jackets. One looked me over slowly. Going somewhere, Mrs. Wood? The name hit harder than a slap. I just need air, I said, forcing a smile. I'm leaving. No one leaves, the other said flatly, without the boss's permission. Panic clawed at my throat. I turned, tried another hallway, another door. Every exit was guarded.
Locked.
Impossible. Finally, I stumbled into a massive office. And there he was. Chris Wood. He sat behind a sleek desk, whiskey glass in hand, dark eyes already on me, as if he'd been waiting. A knowing smirk touched his lips. Running already, he drawled. You didn't even last a morning. You can't keep me here, I said, fists clenched. That marriage isn't real. I didn't know what I was signing. He leaned back, amused. The law doesn't care what you knew. The ink is dry, beauty. You're legally mine. I am not yours, I snapped. I will never be yours.
He stood.
Slow. Deliberate. You're not mine as a woman, he said coldly. You're here to work. To sit in meetings. To sign deals. His eyes were empty as they swept over me. I don't see you as a woman. I never will. You're not my type of meat. Something inside me snapped. I hate men. I breathed, chest heaving. I hate that men like you exist. For a split second, something dark flashed in his eyes. Then it vanished. I'm not interested in your opinions, he said calmly. He stepped closer until his presence swallowed the room. Let me go, I said, my voice firm despite the fear clawing at me. You think you have a choice, he replied softly, deadly calm. The moment you signed that paper, your life stopped being yours. You walk when I say walk. You breathe when I say breathe. And if you try to run, he leaned in, his whisper freezing my blood. I'll show you what happens when someone crosses the King of Shadows. My knees shook, but I lifted my chin. Do your worst, I said. I'd rather fight you than live as your puppet. For the first time, his smile faltered. Then he chuckled. Good, he murmured. I was afraid this marriage might bore me. His eyes gleamed. Prove me wrong, Mrs. Wood. The doors closed behind me. I was trapped. And deep down, I knew my nightmare had only just begun. Elsewhere, the wedding hall in Brooklyn overflowed with white lilies. Guests whispered, checking their watches as minutes turned into hours. The groom stood rigid at the altar. Daniel's bride never came. Days later, his apartment told the story of his rage: shattered glass, overturned furniture, broken frames. He searched every corner of New York, stormed hotels, called every contact he had. Beauty had vanished. Find her, Daniel snarled to his men, eyes burning. I don't care how long it takes. She will regret running from me. He smiled darkly. She'll crawl back. Hi besties, please subscribe to Maria Love Stories if you're enjoying this story. On the other side of New York City, I sat at a dining table so long it felt like a boardroom pretending to be a home. The plate in front of me held food I didn't recognize. Tiny portions. Strange colors. Sauces drizzled like art instead of meals. Silverware, too much silverware, glimmered under the chandelier. A maid stood beside me, smiling politely, whispering instructions like I was a child. Use the smaller fork first, ma'am. Knife angled this way. Gently, yes, just like that. I clenched my jaw as I lifted the fork, my movements stiff and unnatural. I had eaten with my hands before. I had eaten standing up, crying broke. I had never cared how people thought I should eat. Now I was being trained, conditioned, turned into something that fit a world I never asked to enter. Across the room, Chris Wood watched. His expression revealed nothing, but his eyes missed nothing. You're my wife now, he said calmly, his voice sharp with authority. You'll sit beside me at corporate dinners, international negotiations, political fundraisers. You won't embarrass me. I let the fork drop. It hit the plate with a loud clang. I didn't ask for this life, I said flatly. No, Chris replied, stepping closer, his gaze hard as steel. But it's yours now. So learn. The next day, the lessons changed. I found myself inside a private gym overlooking the city skyline. My hands were wrapped in fresh bandages. My muscles already screamed in protest. Chris stood in front of me, sleeves rolled up, dark tattoos curling along his forearms like secrets written in ink. Hit me, he ordered. I blinked. What?
Punch.
Defend yourself. Prove you're not as weak as you look. That word again.
Weak.
Anger surged through my chest. I swung, clumsy and unbalanced. My fist barely grazed a shoulder. He caught my wrist effortlessly, twisting it just enough to force a gasp from my lips. Too soft, he murmured. Your enemies will laugh before they kill you. I yanked my hand free, fire blazing in my eyes. Then stop talking, I snapped, and teach me. For the first time, his lips curved, not into a smirk, but into something close to interest.
And he did.
He corrected my stance, forced me to repeat movements until my arms trembled, threw me to the mat more times than I could count. I fell. I stood back up. Again. And again. Sweat soaked my clothes. My lungs burned. But I refused to stay down. At one point, I stumbled, and my sleeve slid back, exposing the thin, jagged scars lining my arm. Scars Daniel had left behind. Chris's eyes flickered. Something sharp passed through them. He said nothing. He turned away. Again, he ordered, his voice lower. This time with strength. By the end of the week, the stylists arrived. Hands tugged at fabric.
Pins pricked my skin.
My hair was lifted, smoothed, reshaped. Gowns shimmered under bright lights. When I finally stood before the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Elegant.
Poised.
Dangerous in a way I'd never been allowed to be before. Chris appeared behind me, his reflection calm and commanding. Now, he said, you look like my wife. I lifted my chin, meeting his eyes through the glass. My heart still hated him.
But my mind made a vow.
Never again. Never again will any man break me. The limousine slid through Manhattan's glittering night. Skyscrapers blurred past the tinted windows. My palms were damp against the emerald silk of my gown. Diamonds brushed my neck, cold and heavy. I looked flawless on the outside. Inside, I was still the girl who had cried herself to sleep in a cramped apartment days ago. Beside me, Chris adjusted his cufflinks, silent. The only words he'd spoken earlier still echoed in my head. Don't do anything stupid tonight. The car slowed in front of a towering glass hotel. Flashes exploded. Paparazzi swarmed. Chris stepped out first, tall, controlled, untouchable. Then he extended his hand toward me. I hesitated. I didn't want his touch. I didn't want this lie. But the cameras waited. So I placed my hand in his. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I stepped out. Who is she? She's not a model. She's different. I lifted my chin and walked. Inside, the ballroom glowed with gold and crystal. Power hung thick in the air. Billionaires. Politicians. Men who shaped the city with a phone call. All eyes turned toward us. Mr. Wood, an older man, greeted, his smile thin. His gaze slid to me like I was something rare and suspicious. And this must be your wife? Yes, Chris said smoothly. This is beauty. The man chuckled. Unexpected. Very unexpected. You've always had refined taste, Chris. But this is unique. Racist. I heard it clearly. Motherf. I muttered under my breath, my jaw tightening. Chris's hand pressed against my waist, a warning. I ignored it. Unique, I said softly, clearly, is just another word for someone you'll never forget. The man blinked. Then laughter followed, real this time. Respect flickered through the room. Chris's grip tightened, but when I glanced at him, his face was unreadable, except for the faint spark in his eyes. The night became a quiet war. Questions. Smiles. Judgment disguised as politeness. And every time I spoke, the whispers died. By the end of the evening, my feet ached, but my spirit burned. The ride home was silent. Finally, Chris spoke. You disobeyed me. I defended myself. I replied calmly. I won't stand there while people treat me like I don't belong. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he'd explode. Instead, he leaned back, amused. You're playing a dangerous game, beauty. I looked out the window. I've lived in danger my whole life. You're not the first man to scare me. His smirk faltered. The city lights blurred past. Inside the car, an unspoken war raged, his hunger for control and my refusal to kneel. Across the city, Daniel sat in the dark. A half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table. His knuckles raw. His phone glowing with an old photo of me smiling. I was supposed to be his. Rumors had reached him. Whispers in bars. Shadows in alleyways. Beauty, seen beside Chris Wood. Married, they said. To the one man no one dared cross. Daniel's lips twisted into a snarl. No, he muttered. She belongs to me. His fists clenched. And if he had to tear me out of Chris Wood's world to prove it, he would. Even if it killed him. The night inside Chris Wood's mansion in New York was quiet. Too quiet. Until my scream tore through it. I thrashed in my sleep, my body slick with sweat, my heart racing like I was running for my life. In my dream, Daniel was there again, his hands rough, crushing, familiar in the worst way. You think you can leave me? His voice thundered in my head. You're nothing without me. Nothing. I fought invisible chains, my fingers clawing at the sheets. Stop, please stop. I didn't know my cry echoed down the hallway. I didn't know Chris had just returned from a late meeting. I only knew the terror felt real. Too real. The door opened. Moonlight spilled across the bed as I twisted in pain. My fists knotted in the blanket, my chest burning as if I couldn't breathe. I felt a presence before I heard his voice. Beauty. I didn't wake. My breaths came sharp and uneven, my whole body shaking. Even in sleep, I knew fear better than peace. The mattress dipped. A hand touched my shoulder, hesitant at first, then steady. Wake up, he said, firmer now. My eyes flew open. I gasped and shot upright, my heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. The room spun until my gaze locked onto him. Get out, I whispered, my throat raw. Just get out. He didn't move. Instead, he looked at me, really looked. My tear-streaked face. My shaking hands. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. He pulled the blanket higher around me. You're safe here, he said quietly. No one can touch you. I said get out. I repeated, but my voice cracked. His hand brushed my arm, slow, grounding. Not demanding. Not rough. Just there. Sleep, he murmured. I tried to push him away, but the panic inside me was fading, melting under the strange calm of his presence. My breath slowed. My eyelids grew heavy. And before I could stop myself, I leaned closer, my head tilting toward his shoulder as sleep dragged me under again. When I woke hours later, he was gone. But I would later learn something I wasn't supposed to know. That same night, downtown Manhattan, in a private member's lounge dripping with wealth and power, Chris sat in his usual corner. Crystal glasses clinked. Jazz hummed low. The city's most dangerous men laughed like kings. A woman, tall, flawless, wrapped in a red dress, slid in beside him. She whispered promises against his ear. The kind of woman men killed for a night with. Normally, he would have followed. Normally, desire was easy for him. Empty. Disposable. But not that night. Later, in a luxury hotel suite, with her body pressed to his, her lips tracing his neck, he felt nothing. Nothing. Because his mind wasn't there. It was with me. My shaking hands. My broken whisper telling him to leave. The way my breathing softened when fear finally loosened its grip. He pushed her away. Get dressed. She protested. He didn't care. When the door slammed behind her, he sat alone on the edge of the bed, anger coiling tight in his chest. This wasn't who he was. He didn't remember women's faces. He didn't carry voices with him into the night. They were distractions, never scars. So, why couldn't he shake the sound of my sobs? Why did my face refuse to leave his mind? He hated it. Because for the first time in his life, Chris would wanted something he couldn't control. And it terrified him. Hi besties, tell me where you are watching from if you are enjoying the story. Back in the mansion, I slept on, unaware that the man I hated had stayed longer than he should have, unaware that the monster I feared had just taken his first step toward something far more dangerous than power. Attachment. And somewhere across the city, Daniel was awake, his obsession burning hotter by the hour. The war for me hadn't started yet. But it was coming. The drive back from the deal was silent. New York City lights streaked across the tinted windows, flashing like broken memories. I stared out at the skyline, my arms wrapped tightly around myself as if I could hold myself together. Beside me, Chris would leaned back in his seat. I could feel his eyes on me, sharp, calculating. I didn't look like myself tonight. The fire I usually carried felt dimmed. My skin looked pale under the car's soft lighting, and the exhaustion beneath my eyes betrayed how little sleep I'd had. The moment we stepped into the mansion, his voice sliced through the quiet. What was that? I blinked. What was what? He turned to face me fully, his jaw tightening.
You.
Tonight. You looked empty.
Weak.
Do you even understand who I am? Do you know what it means to stand beside me? His voice hardened. Women would kill for the chance to walk into a room with me. And you couldn't even pretend. You don't get to disgrace me. Something inside me snapped. Disgrace you? My voice cracked, sharp and raw. Do you think I care about impressing your world? The words poured out before I could stop them. I haven't slept in days. Every time I close my eyes, he's there, beating me, humiliating me, reminding me of the 3 years I barely survived. My chest heaved as tears burned behind my eyes. You want me flawless? I shouted, my voice breaking. Then erased the nightmares that hunt me every single night. The confession stunned us both. I didn't even know why I'd said it, why I'd exposed myself like that to him. Chris went still. Which man did that to you? He asked quietly. The question hit harder than his anger ever had. For a moment, his arrogance cracked. He was seeing something he hadn't expected, something real. None of your business, I snapped, slamming the door shut on my own vulnerability. Silence followed. Then his voice came again, controlled, restrained. Enough. Pack your things. My brows knit together. What? You're moving into my room tonight. My heart skipped violently. No, it wasn't a request. His tone was cold, final. You will sleep where I tell you to. You will follow my instructions. A bitter laugh escaped me. I'd rather be homeless than share a room with you. He stepped closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over me. His eyes darkened, unreadable. You're my wife, he said calmly. And until this contract ends, you'll do as I say. If I tell you to sleep in my room, then that's where you'll sleep. His voice dropped. Don't test me, beauty. You won't win. Every part of me screamed to fight him, but my body was exhausted, tired of fear, tired of waking up screaming, tired of running, and my fists clenched. Fine. I spat. But don't think for a second that sharing a room with you means I've accepted you. His gaze lingered on me, anger mixed with something else I didn't understand. We'll see, he said. That night, I packed my things and followed him into his bedroom. IT was massive, bigger than my entire home back in Africa.
Cold. Perfect.
Intimidating. Just like him, I climbed onto the far edge of the bed, turning my back to him, clutching the blanket like armor. I didn't trust him. I didn't want him near me. Chris stood by the window, the city lights reflecting in the glass. A glass of whiskey sat untouched in his hand. Neither of us slept, not because of business, but because of the woman breathing softly on one side of the bed and the man standing silently on the other. The night felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest, as the black limousine rolled to a stop outside an abandoned warehouse on the edge of Brooklyn, New York. The place looked forgotten by the world. Rusted metal doors, broken lights, shadows that seemed to breathe. Chris Wood's men moved first. Dark suits. Sharp eyes. The kind of men who didn't flinch at violence because it lived in them. I stepped out behind Chris, my emerald dress brushing the dirty concrete, the sound of my heels echoing too loudly in the silence. I didn't want to be here, but wanting didn't matter anymore. I was his wife. Legally, contractually, painfully. And in Chris Wood's world, a wife stood where she was told, especially when her husband was the most feared man in the city, the man they whispered about, the king of shadows. Inside, the rival syndicate waited. American men with cold smiles and eyes that measured how much you were worth dead. The air smelled like smoke, greed, and violence. Chris slid into his seat at the long steel table. His hand settled on my lower back, not gentle, not comforting. A warning, stay close. The negotiation started with fake laughter and poisoned words. I didn't understand their coded language, but my body did. My heart raced. My skin prickled. Something was wrong. Then everything exploded. A voice rose, a chair scraped, and suddenly, gunfire. The sound was deafening. Bullets tore through glass. Men shouted. Bodies moved fast. I screamed and dropped instinctively. Pain ripped through my arm and I gasped as fire shot through my skin. Blood ran down my wrist, soaking the lace on my sleeve. My knees buckled. Beauty. Chris's voice cut through the chaos. The next second, his body was in front of mine. He dragged me up, shielding me as bullets flew. His gun fired back with deadly precision. Get her out, someone yelled. I've got her. Chris snapped. He lifted me like I weighed nothing, his arm locked around me as he moved fast, controlled, lethal. I barely registered the warehouse disappearing behind us. All I knew was that I was shaking and bleeding and alive. The car sped through the city, tires screaming against asphalt. Chris drove with one hand, the other gripping my wounded arm. "Hospital," he muttered. "No." I cried instantly. "No hospital." He shot me a look. "You're bleeding. You need treatment." "I won't go," I said, my voice cracking. "I hate hospitals. The smell. The noise. It feels like death waiting to happen. Take me home." His jaw tightened. For a long second, he said nothing. "Stubborn," he muttered. Then he turned the car toward the mansion. He kicked the door open and carried me inside like a storm. He laid me gently on the leather couch and disappeared, only to return with a medical kit. Chris would treating me. His movements were rough but careful as he cleaned the wound. His fingers were warm,
Steady.
focused. I hissed. "That hurts." "I know," he said quietly. I watched him. The way his brow furrowed. The way his thumb brushed my skin, as if he didn't want to hurt me again. This wasn't the man who controlled me. This was someone else. "Chris," I whispered before I could stop myself.
Thank you.
He looked up, our eyes locked. The air shifted.
Thick.
Dangerous. His hand lingered on my wrist. My breath hitched. Too close. Then he tied the bandage sharply and leaned back, breaking it. "Your trouble, beauty," he muttered. I smiled faintly. "Good." A week later, the wound had faded, but the tension hadn't. Chris sat on the edge of the bed with his laptop open, pretending to work. I sat at the vanity, combing oil into my hair, my satin nightgown clinging softly to my skin. I felt his eyes before I saw them. That I turned, caught him watching. He snapped his gaze away, typing too fast. I smiled slowly. As though the King of Shadows watches, I stood and walked toward him, barefoot, unhurried. I leaned close enough for my jasmine oil to surround him. "There's something in my eye," I said softly. "Can you check?" He sighed but leaned in.
His fingers lifted my chin.
Our faces were inches apart, and then my strap slipped. His eyes dropped. Something dark flashed across his face. He grabbed the back of my neck and kissed me. Hard, hungry. The kiss stole my breath, his mouth demanding, his grip fierce, like he'd been holding back for too long. My body betrayed me, responding before my mind could stop at 30 seconds of fire. Then I shoved him away. "I thought I wasn't your type of meat," I said coldly, throwing his own cruel words back at him. He froze. I straightened my gown, my voice sharp. "Don't touch me again." I walked away, and behind me, Chris Wood, the King of Shadows, sat stunned, burning, and completely undone. The private club in downtown Chicago was drowning in smoke, whiskey, and secrets, but I wasn't there to see it. Daniel was. I would learn later how his hand slammed the photograph onto the polished table. Me, standing beside Chris Wood. Dressed in black, chin lifted, wife. Daniel stared at that image like it was a betrayal carved into flesh. His fingers tightened around his glass until the men around him feared it would shatter. 2 months, he snarled. 2 months he's been parading her as his wife. My woman. Silence swallowed the room. Someone finally spoke, voice shaking. "Boss, Chris Wood isn't a man you provoke." Daniel leaned forward, eyes dark with obsession. "I don't need to touch him," he said coldly. "I need to touch her." And just like that, the room knew. This wasn't business. This was fixation. He laid out his plan calmly, almost politely. He wouldn't attack. He wouldn't hide. He would walk straight into Chris Wood's mansion in New York, during one of those elite gatherings where foreign money and dangerous men drank together, and smiled. "I'll buy her back," Daniel said, smiling slowly. "And if he refuses, I'll bleed him dry for keeping what's mine." No one argued, because obsession was far more dangerous than greed. That same night, miles away in New York, I screamed myself awake. "No, please, Daniel, stop." My body twisted violently under the sheets, sweat clinging to my skin, tears soaking the pillow. I didn't even know where I was anymore, only that the past had claws and it was dragging me back. Then I felt hands on me. Careful. Solid. "Beauty," Chris whispered. "Wake up. It's just a dream." I gasped, eyes flying open, panic tearing through my chest. Before I could think, he pulled me into his arms. I didn't resist. I couldn't. My body shook against his chest as if it recognized safety before my mind did. "You're safe," he murmured, one hand stroking my hair, the other holding me firmly. "He can't touch you. Not while I'm breathing." Slowly, my breathing steadied. Slowly, the fear loosened its grip. I fell asleep again, still clinging to him, like he was the only thing keeping me tethered to this world. Chris didn't move. He stayed there, watching my face, the woman who had fought him, defied him, challenged him. The woman who had somehow slipped past his armor, and in that silence, something broke inside him. I didn't hear his whisper, but later, I would feel it. "I've fallen for you, beauty." The lights of Las Vegas blurred past the tinted windows, but Chris wasn't seeing them. He had been away from me for 3 weeks, a business trip he claimed was necessary. He told himself the distance would fix him, that staying away from me would turn him back into the man he used to be, cold, untouchable, unfeeling. Instead, it chained him. Every night after meetings, his phone burned in his hand. Not to call me, never me. He called the chef instead. "Did she eat?" he'd ask, pretending not to care. At midnight, he'd call the housekeeper. "Check her room," he'd say. "Make sure she isn't crying or having nightmares." Even during billion-dollar negotiations, his mind betrayed him. Was I laughing? Was I lonely? Had I already forgotten him? 3 weeks felt like forever. When his jet finally landed in New York, relief wasn't what hit him. Fear was, because 3 months had passed since I signed the marriage contract, the exact length of our agreement. The deals were done, the alliance secured, the marriage over. I had been a transaction, but a pawn, and yet I had stolen his heart. The drive to the mansion was silent. His men felt it too. Something was wrong. Chris entered his study alone, loosened his tie, and opened his banking app. One transfer, $50 million, the price of my freedom. The price of his denial. On the desk sat an envelope. Divorce papers, .1 signature, .1 stroke of ink, and I would no longer be his wife. He picked up the pen. His hand trembled. For the first time in his life, the King of Shadows was afraid. Because the truth was undeniable now. He didn't want to let me go. Not now, not ever. The front door of the mansion clicked shut behind him. I froze at the top of the stairs, my heart hammering so hard it was a miracle it didn't shatter my ribs. Chris Wood was back. For 3 weeks, I had convinced myself I didn't care, that the silence of his absence was a relief, that I could survive without his cold, unreadable gaze. But the moment he appeared in the hallway, tall, imposing, dressed in black like he had walked straight out of a magazine cover, all my resolve crumbled. Before reason could catch me, I ran forward. My arms wrapped around him, without thought. My cheek pressed to his chest, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne, mingling with the faint tang of his jet travel. For a heartbeat, it felt like home. Then reality crashed down and I stepped back quickly, cheeks flaming. But Chris didn't let me go. His arms snaked around my waist, pulling me back against his broad chest. "Do you miss me?" His voice was low, rough, almost vulnerable. That I tried to scowl, tried to sound indifferent. No, I attempted to pull away, but his hand slid along my back, up my arm, resting against my neck. His thumb brushed my jaw as his eyes, dark and intense, locked on mine. "Do you miss my lips?" he whispered, husky. "My hands on your body?" My pulse skipped. His lips grazed my chin, feather-light, and my knees nearly gave out. I tried to control my breathing, to resist, but my body had other plans. Shivers ran down my spine. "Betraying me," he smirked. Tonight, it was his turn to tease. My lips parted on their own. My eyes fluttered closed. And then our mouths met. The kiss wasn't like before. Slow. Tentative. It was fierce, deliberate, consuming. Our bodies molded together. My hand pressed to his chest. His arms held me closer, as if letting go was impossible. Every touch, every movement, screamed of months we had denied ourselves. My hips shifted, craving more. His mouth trailed down my neck, tasting me. I gasped softly, clutching his shirt as though it were the only anchor in the world. And just as the heat threatened to engulf us, his phone rang. The moment shattered. We broke apart, breathless, trembling. our eyes still locked. Chris answered the call, sharp, clipped. Turning slightly away did I glance behind him. My heart froze. On the silk sheets sat a crisp envelope. Divorce papers. MY phone buzzed beside it. Shaky hands lifted it. $50, 000 credited to your account. The man who had just kissed me like I was air had already planned to cast me away. My hands trembled as I stared at the papers. The ink was black and white betrayal. My chest ached. My throat burned. I didn't think. I acted. I picked up the pen, scratched my signature across the page. The sound cut through the mansion's silence like a knife. Chris's eyes darkened. Do you really want this? You want me to sign too? I swallowed. Pride wrapped around me like armor. I said nothing. I set the pen down with deliberate calm, turned, and walked away. MY's silence spoke louder than words ever. Chris's jaw clenched. Fury boiled beneath his skin. Moments ago, I had melted in his arms, kissed him as if he were my oxygen. And now, I chose myself over him. He snatched the papers, scribbled his signature with a growl, and slammed the pen down.
Fine.
If that's what you want. But beneath the mask of control, I knew he was burning. The last gala of our contract was held in New York City, a glittering affair of power, wealth, and cameras. I walked in beside him, the fitted netted gown shimmering. With every step, heads turned, conversations halted, cameras clicked. I was radiant. I was breathtaking. And I was no longer his. Chris's composure never wavered, but I could feel his eyes following me like a predator obsessed. Hours passed. The music swelled. The glasses clinked. I wanted to loosen up. I picked up a crystal glass filled with sparkling red liquid. Smiling lightly, I thought it was fruit wine, and tea wasn't. The sharp burn slid down my throat, and my tolerance, or lack of it, betrayed me. Within minutes, my cheeks were flushed, my words slurred, laughter spilling uncontrollably. Beauty, Chris muttered, realization flashing in his eyes. He wrapped a protective arm around my waist, guiding me away before anyone noticed my state. I rested against him, grateful, laughing, alive, free in this moment. Even as our time together was about to end, back in the privacy of the suite, I stumbled into the room, giggling as I kicked off my heels. My gown shimmered under the chandelier like a constellation. I spun around, dizzy and giddy, feeling weightless for the first time in weeks. You're so bossy, I teased, poking Chris Wood in the chest. Always telling me what to do. He let out a low sigh, loosening his tie with a deliberate slowness. You're drunk. I admitted, a mischievous grin spreading across my face, but I feel free. Without warning, I threw myself onto the bed, laughing, before rolling over to look at him with playful, dangerous eyes. Then, carelessly seductive, I crawled toward him. My fingers grazed his shirt buttons. Beauty. His voice dropped, warning, but I silenced him with a bold kiss. I tugged at his jacket, unbuttoned his shirt with trembling determination, my lips tracing the line of his neck, teasing his ear. He groaned, his restraint cracking, piece by piece. Stop. You're drunk. You'll regret this in the morning. His chest rose and fell with effort. I pulled back slightly, eyes half-lidded, voice husky. Yes, I'm drunk. But I know what I want tonight, and it's you. Before he could argue, my lips claimed his again, desperate, demanding that Chris's control shattered. He grabbed my waist, pressing me against him as our mouths collided. The suite seemed to catch fire around us. Clothes slipped to the floor in chaotic abandon. Every touch, every kiss, every suppressed desire exploded in that room. When our bodies finally joined, it was more than lust. It was war, surrender, and everything we had been running from. Hours later, exhausted and breathless, the sun still hours away, we finally collapsed, tangled together, the world outside forgotten. Later, the mansion gleamed under golden chandeliers, its marble floors echoing the voices of America's wealthiest. Investors, billionaires, and influential politicians sat in polished seats, eyes glued to the high-stakes auction. Chris was at the center, sharp in his tailored suit, commanding the room with the ease of a king. Rare art, priceless jewelry, and estates went up for bidding, each raising the tension in the air for me, though this wasn't just an auction. It was my last day in the mansion. My luggage was packed. I was supposed to leave quietly, unseen. But fate had other plans. As I walked past the grand hall, a voice stopped me cold. Stop. My heart froze. Daniel. He rose from his seat at the front, his gaze like a predator spotting prey. A cruel smile stretched across his lips as he scanned me from head to toe. There she is, he said, voice sharp, cutting through the murmurs of confused guests. My chest tightened. Fear surged through me like ice water, my legs threatening to give out beneath me. Chris Wood, Daniel continued, loud enough for the room to hear. How much will she cost? Name it and I'll pay. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some laughed awkwardly, thinking it a joke. But Daniel's eyes didn't laugh, they burned. He wasn't playing. Memories crashed through me. His fists. His cruel words. The nights of punishment for daring to escape. Phantom pain tore at my bones. Tears stung my eyes.
I was truly alone now.
Chris wasn't my husband anymore. He had signed the papers, granted me freedom, given me a fortune. He had no obligation. None that I couldn't ask him to save me. Not again. But Chris, he already knew. He saw my shaking hands, the silent tears sliding down my cheeks, the fear in my eyes. His jaw tightened. Slowly, deliberately, he rose from his seat and strode toward Daniel. The air in the room shifted, thick and tense. I won't be selling her, Chris said, low and sharp, cutting through the whispers. She's not a commodity. His eyes narrowed. She's my wife. The room went dead silent. Daniel's smirk widened. Wife. Don't fool yourself. She was mine long before she was yours. She's my girlfriend. She got lost, but I found her again. And she's coming home with me. My knees buckled. If I went with him, it would end me. Chris's dark eyes snapped to me. Has he been hurting you? I nodded, tears streaming freely, my voice trapped in sobs. Volcano fury erupted in Chris's veins. Without hesitation, he swung, connecting a crushing punch across Daniel's jaw. The crack echoed through the hall. Daniel went flying, crashing onto the polished floor. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed. Bidders scattered. Security surged. But Chris's eyes never left me. I was trembling, heart racing. Safe for the first time in years, and for the first time I knew, no matter the battles, no matter the past, I wasn't alone. Chris's men surged forward instantly, grabbing Daniel and restraining him. Lock him up. And make sure he never forgets who he's crossed. Chris barked, his voice cold steel. The crowd of high-profile guests froze, watching in stunned silence. Some whispered in shock, others in awe. No one dared intervene. I stood frozen at the edge of the chaos, tears streaming down my cheeks. But for the first time in years, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief, tears of gratitude. My chest heaved as I looked at him. My lips quivered into a shaky smile. For the first time, I felt safe. Truly safe. Chris turned toward me, his fist still throbbing from the punch, but his eyes were on me alone. The hall had quieted. Whispers faded. All that existed was us. Thank you, I whispered, my voice trembling. Chris gave a small nod, softer than I'd ever seen him, but then my legs betrayed me. My face paled, my body trembled as if every ounce of strength had drained from me. Beauty. Chris's voice thundered as I collapsed forward. He caught me before I hit the floor, cradling me against his chest. Panic ignited in him like wildfire. Doctor, call my doctor, now, he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. One of his men stepped forward. Sir, should we take her to the hospital? No, Chris snapped, urgency cracking his tone. She doesn't like hospitals. Call my doctor, have them come here. Now. Later, in his room, I lay on Chris's bed, pale but safe. He sat beside me, clutching my hand like letting go would mean losing me forever. The door opened, and the doctor stepped in, calm and professional. Mr. Wood, he said softly.
She's not sick.
She's pregnant. Time froze. My heart skipped, then roared in disbelief. Pregnant. With his child. Our child. A smile broke across Chris's face, the first genuine smile I'd ever seen from him. Thank you, doctor, he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. He hurried back to me, never letting his eyes leave mine, and I blinked, confused and weak. What happened? You fainted, Chris said, cupping my hand. His voice thickened, trembling with awe. But the doctor said you're carrying our child. My eyes widened. Pregnant. Tears pooled as I clutched my stomach. I don't wait ours. Yes, he whispered, low and steady.
Ours.
Our baby. Overwhelmed, I cover my face, trembling. Beauty. Chris's voice shook as he pulled my hands from my face and pressed them against his chest. I can't hold it back anymore. I love you. I've loved you for a long time. You've broken through every wall I built around my heart. And now, with you and our child, I never want to let go. Ever. Sobs escaped me, uncontrollable, hot against his chest. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. With our family. Please tell me I haven't lost you. My tears fell freely as I gripped his shirt, searching his eyes. My voice broke. Then a faint smile curved my lips. I'll love you too, Chris. I tried to fight it. I tried to deny it, but I can't. I love you. Chris finally let his own tears slip. He pulled me into his arms, kissing my hair, my temple, my lips. You're mine, he whispered. Forever. Even with a growing bump, I remained as stubborn as ever. One morning, Chris found me in the kitchen, standing on a small stool, reaching for the top shelf. What are you doing? He barked. Getting the strawberry jam? I replied, grinning. You could have asked the staff. He crossed his arms and I rolled my eyes. I'm pregnant, not crippled. You're reckless. I'm independent. You're stubborn. And you love it. I smirked, hopping down with the jar. He groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose. But when I giggled and kissed his cheek, his heart melted all over again. One evening, we sat on the balcony, the city lights of New York sparkling below us. Chris pulled me close and whispered, You know it's funny. Your name is Beauty. And me? I've always been called a beast. Cold, ruthless, untouchable. I tilted my head, smiling softly. Beauty and the Beast, we should watch that movie tonight. He smirked, pulling me closer. Then you'll be my beauty. Forever. I laughed softly, resting my head on his chest. My most handsome and loving beast. For the first time in his life, Chris felt complete.
The end.